It was a cool fall evening, and I was home alone. I live in this old Victorian house that sits way off the road. No neighbors for miles. The kind of house that creaks even when nothing's happening. My wife was visiting her mom for the weekend, so I had the place to myself. I wasn't even doing anything special, just sitting in the living room, watching TV, minding my own business. It was one of those nights where the wind makes the trees sway, and it almost sounds like someone whispering outside. Creepy, but I was used to it. The sun had just gone down, and I was thinking about heading to bed when I heard a knock at the door. It startled me because, like I said, no neighbors, and no one ever just shows up here. I paused the TV and sat there for a second listening. Then I heard the knock again, louder this time, like whoever was out there was getting impatient. I walked to the front door but stopped just short of it. Something felt off. I don't know why, but I didn't want to open it right away. Instead, I went to the window next to the door to peek outside. The porch light was on, but there was no one there. I figured maybe they stepped back into the shadows or something, so I waited a second and called out, "Hello? Who's there?" A man's voice answered, kinda shaky.
Hey, I need to use a phone. My car broke down up the road. It's an emergency.
It sounded like a normal enough request, but something wasn't right. I looked out the window again, leaning over to get a better view, but still, no one was there. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady.
I'm right here.
He replied. But I swear, I couldn't see anyone. Not a shadow, not a figure, nothing. Just the porch and the dark driveway stretching out into the trees. I didn't like this. "Sorry, man. I don't see you. You gotta come into the light." For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence, like he was thinking about what to say next. Then the voice came again, this time closer, right outside the door.
Please, just let me in. I really need to use a phone.
My heart was pounding now. The thing is, there was no car. If he'd broken down, I would have seen headlights or heard the engine or something. But it was just my house and the empty road. "I don't have a phone, man," I lied, trying to buy time. "You should try the gas station a few miles back." I was hoping he'd leave. I was hoping that would be enough. But it wasn't. The knocking started again, louder and faster this time, like he was panicking.
Come on, just open the door. I need help.
Something about his voice changed. It wasn't desperate anymore. It was demanding, almost angry. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do. Call the cops? But what if this was just some guy who really did need help? But that's when it hit me. He never said he needed a phone to call for help. He just said he needed to use a phone. Who says that? I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife from the drawer, and tried to calm myself down. The knocking stopped, but I still felt like he was out there, waiting. I went back to the window, crouched low, and peeked out again. Nothing. No movement. No sound. I was about to call it a night and just barricade myself in the bedroom when I heard something at the back door. A soft tapping, almost like someone was dragging their fingers along the wood. I froze. The back door didn't have a window. If someone was out there, I wouldn't be able to see them. My stomach dropped. He wasn't at the front anymore. He'd moved around the house. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing, so I quietly walked through the hallway toward the back. My steps felt too loud, even though I was tiptoeing. When I got to the kitchen again, I could see the back door, and my heart almost stopped. The doorknob was turning, slowly, back and forth, like he was trying to figure out if it was unlocked. I stood there, gripping the knife so tight my hand was shaking, and watched as the doorknob kept turning, then stopped. A few seconds later, the front door started banging again, like he was trying to kick it down. The guy was everywhere, like he knew exactly how to get under my skin. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering into the receiver that someone was trying to break into my house. The operator kept asking questions, but I was too scared to even think straight. All I could say was, "Please, hurry. He's trying to get in." The banging stopped just as the operator told me police were on their way. I stood there, waiting, not sure where he'd show up next. It felt like hours, but it was probably only a few minutes before I saw the blue and red lights flashing through the windows. That's when I heard footsteps, running footsteps. They were fast, moving away from the house, toward the woods. I ran to the front door and opened it just as the cops were pulling into the driveway. I pointed toward the trees, shouting, "He ran that way." The cops searched the area, but they never found him. No car, no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there at all. It's been a few weeks now, and I still don't know what that guy wanted or why he came to my house. But the worst part? He hasn't been found, and sometimes I'm still just downright scared to go to sleep. I went to a haunted cornfield attraction last Halloween with my friend Kevin. I've always loved those spooky events, but this one turned out to be something I never expected. Honestly, I don't know why I'm even sharing this because it still freaks me out. It started off normal. We arrived just before dark, got our tickets, and stood in line with the rest of the crowd. There were a lot of people around, some in costumes, some just looking to get a little scare and have fun. I didn't expect anything weird at all. The whole thing was supposed to be about scaring people with actors dressed like killers, jumping out at you in the corn maze. You know, typical stuff. When we finally got to the front, this guy at the entrance, dressed as a scarecrow, handed us a flashlight. He wasn't talking much, just pointing people into the maze. I thought it was part of his act because he kept staring at people for way too long. His mask was dirty, and his clothes smelled weird like he'd been rolling around in a barn. But whatever. I figured he was just into the character. Kevin made a joke about how the guy was creepier than the maze itself, and we both laughed. We stepped into the maze, and at first, it was fun. People jumped out at us, and we screamed and laughed. Everything was going fine, until it wasn't. After a few minutes, we noticed that the scarecrow guy was following us into the maze. At first it was subtle. We'd turn a corner, and I'd catch a glimpse of him standing at the end of the row of corn, just watching us. I told Kevin, and he brushed it off, saying it was probably just part of the show. But I don't know. Something felt off. As we got deeper into the maze, the actors seemed to disappear. It got quieter, and the screams we heard earlier were farther away. It was like we were getting separated from everyone else. That's when we saw the scarecrow guy again, only this time, he wasn't just watching, he was holding something. It looked like a small blade, but I couldn't tell exactly what it was in the dark. Kevin was starting to get nervous too, so we tried to pick up the pace. But no matter which way we turned, he was always there, a little closer each time. We started to panic. At this point, it wasn't fun anymore. I tried to shout for help, but it felt like no one was around to hear us. Then, out of nowhere, the scarecrow lunged at us. I felt something sharp graze my arm. I screamed and shoved him off me, and Kevin grabbed me, pulling me away as we ran through the maze. My arm was bleeding, and I realized this wasn't just some actor playing a role anymore. This guy was actually trying to hurt us. We sprinted through the maze, pushing through corn stalks and stumbling over our feet. Every time we thought we'd lost him, he'd appear again, like he knew exactly where we were going. At one point, Kevin tripped, and I had to help him up. That gave the scarecrow enough time to get close again, and he swiped at us with his blade, cutting Kevin's leg. I thought we were done for, but somehow we found the exit. We burst out of the cornfield, bloody and gasping for breath. People saw us and started screaming. The workers rushed over, and we told them what happened. Turns out that scarecrow guy wasn't even supposed to be working there. He was some random guy who'd snuck into the maze pretending to be part of the attraction. The cops were called, and they found him wandering around inside the maze, still holding that blade. They arrested him right there. Kevin and I went to the hospital. I needed stitches on my arm, and Kevin's leg was messed up pretty bad. The whole thing felt surreal, like it couldn't have actually happened. But it did. I haven't been to any haunted attractions since then. I thought they were supposed to be scary but fun. I didn't know they could turn into something real, something deadly. Honestly, I'm still shaken up about it. Be careful out there, especially when you think you're just going for a thrill. You never know when someone might take it too far. Me and my friend Mike had this dumb idea one afternoon. We were bored and decided to check out one of those abandoned buildings on the west side of Detroit. The ones you always pass by but never really think about going into. Yeah, those. It was a sketchy area, lots of empty houses, trash everywhere, broken windows, and just straight up silence like nobody ever goes there. But we thought it'd be fun. And honestly, it was my idea, so I kind of feel guilty about everything that went down. We got there around 4 in the afternoon. The building was this old, run-down warehouse. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The front door was chained up, so we had to sneak in through a side window that was already busted out. It was dark inside, even though the sun was still out. I remember the place smelling like mold and something else I couldn't put my finger on, maybe rotten food or dead animals. The floors were covered in trash, like old newspapers and beer cans. I was already feeling uneasy, but I didn't want to look like a wimp in front of Mike. As we walked deeper inside, I started hearing faint noises. I tried to brush it off as just wind or the building settling, but in the back of my mind, I was nervous. Mike kept laughing it off, saying how cool this was, and how he couldn't wait to post some pictures online. We had our phones out, using them as flashlights, and he kept taking pictures of the graffiti on the walls. Then, things got real. We made it to the second floor, and that's when I noticed something wasn't right. I heard footsteps like, not ours. I stopped Mike, and we both went quiet. We listened, and sure enough, there it was again. Footsteps, but this time closer. It was like someone was walking right above us, or maybe below us, I don't know. But it freaked me out. I whispered to him, telling him we should bounce, but he waved me off. He thought it was just a raccoon or something, nothing to worry about. That's when we saw him. This homeless guy appeared out of nowhere, stumbling out from behind some old crates. He looked rough, man. I'm talking wild eyes, dirty clothes, and just angry. I froze. I didn't know what to say or do. He started yelling at us, saying we were trespassing and that this was his place. I tried to explain that we didn't mean any harm, that we were just leaving. But Mike, being Mike, started mouthing off, saying something about it being a free country and how we weren't bothering him. Bad idea. The guy reached into his jacket, and that's when I saw it. A gun. My heart was racing, and I grabbed Mike, trying to pull him back, but it was too late. The guy was already shouting, waving the gun around. I told Mike to shut up, to stop pushing the guy, but he didn't back down. He took one step toward the man, and that's when it happened. The gun went off. I didn't even realize what had happened at first. It was just this loud bang, and then Mike was on the ground. I swear, everything after that felt like slow motion. The homeless guy just stood there for a second, like he couldn't believe what he'd done. Then he ran. I don't even know which way he went because my mind was stuck on Mike, bleeding out on the dirty floor. I dropped down next to him, panicking, trying to put pressure on the wound like I'd seen in movies. He was gasping for air, trying to say something, but it was all a blur. I somehow managed to call 911, but it felt like forever before they showed up. Mike was slipping in and out of consciousness, and I kept talking to him, telling him to hang on. When the paramedics finally arrived, they rushed him to the hospital. I rode with him in the ambulance, feeling like I was going to throw up the whole time. Mike's been in the hospital for 2 weeks now. He's recovering, but it's slow. The bullet hit his side, and the doctors say he's lucky to be alive. The cops came and asked me a ton of questions, but I don't think they ever found the guy. I haven't gone back to that part of town since. I can't even drive by it without feeling sick. Every time I close my eyes, I see that moment again. The gun going off, Mike falling to the ground. I don't think I'll ever forget it. So yeah, that's my story. Just a stupid decision that nearly got my best friend killed.